Welcome back to Taxpayer Empowerment. I'm Jose Melendez, Campaign Director for the Taxpayer Protection Project here at TPPF. Today we're talking about some of the biggest issues we're facing Texans. From runaway local spending to sky-high property taxes, the fight for fiscal freedom continues, and few voices at the Capitol have been more consistent and more courageous than that of Representative Helen Kerwin. Representative Kerwin, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So you've been one of the biggest and most outspoken advocates when it comes to the elimination of property taxes. So in that same vein, this session, the Texas legislature had an opportunity to pass a multi-billion-dollar tax relief package once again, and that's all credited to you and your folks at the legislature. I want to run an idea by you and let me know what you think about it, flesh it out if you will. How do you view the idea of dedicating a set percentage of our surplus every session and dedicating that towards, tax relief every session?
Well, actually, I filed a bill doing that, and I think that is a good start. My bill required 10% of the surplus to be a line item in our budget dedicated to that, and I believe we can probably do more than 10%. I'm hoping to maybe look at another figure for the next session. But I think that is a good start. And I tell you why. Everyone, so many reps are just a firm believer in this. We want to do it. Sure. We need to eliminate property tax, replace it. There's so many ways, so many paths. 24 bills were filed in the special session. All with common denominators, usually, but then there's a lot of different aspects, too, and I would love to see the best parts of those bills become the perfect bill. And I think that the way to start is a line item in our budget with the surplus. Maybe we can get there. It's going to take a while. I was even thinking of maybe slowly introducing a pilot program by district, taking a rural and an urban mixed districts and opening the door that way like we did with school choice. Begin slowly and then reevaluate, and hopefully it can become statewide where we can get rid of property taxes.
Absolutely. And the foundation is on board with that. Staying in that same vein, talk to us about what a realistic path looks like to phasing out, at the very least, the M&O portion of our property taxes.
Well, of course, we begin with a dedicated amount of the surplus going to compression, as we've been doing. And it certainly has made a big difference. I think we took a giant step this year with our homestead exemptions. We have slowly gone from 100 to 140 to 160. And when we voted on the final bill, we actually approved a $200,000 exemption for the seniors and for the disabled. What that told me is that we are going to have a lot of seniors that are no longer going to be paying M&O taxes. So I think it opened the door to eliminating property taxes with the senior exemption and the disabled exemption. So that was a great start. And now we can take on next session, hopefully, looking at a broader way to eliminate, which would involve what I call the consumption tax or the sales tax, which when I explain to my constituents, it's not an elimination of your property tax, it's a replacement so that it'll eventually go away by a tax that is voluntary. You can pick and choose. By your consumption, the items that you actually are going to buy, you can pick and choose the amount of taxes you are going to pay throughout the year. I think it is an extremely realistic way of going about this. There is also another path called the VAT tax, which it's a value-added tax, and it's a cascading tax where you actually, in a product you may be manufacturing, you begin at like a pencil. You will begin at the eraser, and you'll tax the manufacturer of that will tax that amount, and then you go down to the pencil itself, and then down to the lead, and all those steps. Cascading tax will amount to a final tax that is not going to be rung up at the register because it's already been assessed in the process. So we are looking at that, possibly tweaking that, but being another I think in addition, I don't think it can be a complete path. It could be very volatile depending on economic downturns, but I think it could be a realistic way.
To your point, I don't think there's going to be a silver bullet per se. Rather, it's going to take various efforts to get to the point where we, get closer to phasing out the property taxes.
Absolutely.
Shifting gears just a little bit, you pushed hard for appraisal reform last session.
Yes.
As you know, for many Texans, appraisals are skyrocketing, which means their tax bills are high. Can you, for a moment, just walk us through your legislation, what it did, and where does that stand heading into next session?
Well, I believe that almost all boards should be elected rather than appointed, all levels of government. I came up through local government, city, county, regional, and now I'm at state. And I saw in so many cases that boards can often be appointed to just be yes members. And they are not actually motivated to understand the issues before they vote. So my bill was requesting 5, which is the majority of the CAD boards, to be elected by their constituents. There was a bill passed in the 88th.
Did your bill, sorry for interrupting, but did your bill touch all jurisdictions across Texas?
It was state.
Okay.
It was state. And in the 88th, they passed one with 3, which is wonderful. And it was a start. But I'd like to do the majority. I would eventually like to do the entire board to be elected. Appraisers, the CAD districts, I did not realize when I was campaigning, and eliminate property tax was not one of my planks. I did the border, school choice, and election integrity until I got a month into my knocking on doors and hearing over and over again, people are being taxed out of their homes, seniors are moving into RV parks, young families can't afford. I had one lady actually say to me that she has paid more in taxes than she has for her mortgage. So I took it on at that point, and I discovered an amazing group in our state, eliminatepropertytaxes.com. They have been working on this for years, the concept, and now there's a new group, abolishpropertytaxes.com. So I think that I think we are listening because our constituents are now speaking up. It's a big, big issue, and I think it's the number one issue going into the next session.
Absolutely. Staying in the same realm, local spending in our state is out of control. In fact, you look at local debt, I think we're approaching $500 billion of local government debt across the state of Texas. Yeah. I'm curious about your perspective. You served in local office. You've been on the inside. How do you see the fiscal irresponsibility playing out across cities and counties across Texas?
Well, fiscal constraints, one of my biggest issues. I'm most passionate about it because I saw local and county governments outspending their budgets. They would say their budgets are investments in the future. Well, to get them under control, we, of course, have to begin to look at how do we limit spending on the local level. And we had SB 10 this session, a special session in the end, which would have brought the cap down to from 3.5 to 2.5, 1% difference. And I, of course, supported that because I thought this, again, is a beginning. This alerts our local governments to say, okay, they're watching us. We're going to have to deal with this. We need transparent budgets. I think that one of the avenues to this is to address it through population and growth. Why would a community of 4,000 people be putting into their budgets just exorbitant costs, calling them investments? For example, I have a school district. I have 9 school districts in my district. I have a school district that their bonds are encumbering 5th graders today until they're in their 30s to get it paid off. And it's a fairly small community, and that kind of spending and encumbering future generations with taxes is just, it's got to stop.
In that vein, one noble idea I heard about last week when we were up in Fort Worth is putting a ticket cost for every student, like that fifth grader, and how much they're going to be on the hook for 30 years from now for that bond.
That's great. That's what needs to be done. But I tell you, another thing is so many of my constituents just don't even think about running for boards, whether it's CAD or school or council or commissioner's court. They don't even consider, I can never. Everyone needs to run for office on all levels. And they just need to educate themselves. They need to show up. They need to speak up. And I think that's how we keep this movement going.
Staying in the realm of local spending as a follow-up, one of the proposals that was put forth in this past two special sessions dealt with, we've told local governments, you got to rein in your spending, but seemingly most of our local governments, your cities, your counties, aren't doing that. They're spending like drunken sailors. So there was a proposal that would have put this similar limitations that the state observes on spending down to local governments. Do you think that's something that we should be going all in for next session?
Well, there's a big, I believe we have a problem in many areas of government overreach. So I think that's a very blurred line with local governments. But I think if it's determined that the spending is completely out of line with the government, the local or the county or the city or the school board, then I think that there has to be some sort of government engagement to constrain that spending. Yes. And I'm but when I was back from the city, when I was mayor, we did zero-based budgeting. And I learned early on that is probably the most disciplined way to control your budget. A lot of complaints. People were not happy. But you know what? In the end, you look at your bottom line, everyone on the council understood it, the constituents understood it, and we always came in less than the year before. So I'm a firm believer in that.
That's incredible. Shifting gears to another issue that came up during special session, and it's been at the forefront for not just the legislature, but conservative circles, and that's the issue of ending taxpayer-funded lobbying. It's the process of our local government associations spending our tax dollars to fight reforms that would benefit us, Texans, our residents. And so we saw this again with your bill, House Bill 1674, which is the PFAS legislation, or the forever chemicals, where it faced opposition from local officials, associations, special interests, and even companies like Synagro. And on that note, I learned and I was informed yesterday that Synagro, was advised of a competitive contract here with the city of Austin by Texas Disposal Systems. And basically they got firsthand knowledge, which is highly unethical. Can you kind of walk us through what's going on here behind the scenes? And then after that, tell us why we need to end the practice of taxpayer-funded lobbying.
I introduced a bill on behalf of Johnson County, my district's Johnson County. Specifically, this was a farm in Cleburne, right near Cleburne, Texas, where the owners had actually called in to the county experiencing just a lot of ailments, animals, sick, dying. And so they took soil samples and found PFAS. So my bill was about testing for PFAS, which is perfluoroalkyl, which took me a week to learn how to say. So we call them forever chemicals.
Sure.
They last forever. They're indestructible, and people are getting sick. So it kind of put me on a path to finding out why this is happening. And we actually got to the source of a wastewater plant in Fort Worth that was spreading their wastewater after it was treated as fertilizer on the farmer's land. It identified 17 chemicals that are forever chemicals, which are connected to and have proven with many studies causing cancer, diabetes, all kinds of diseases and sicknesses, both humans and animals. And of course, this fertilizer was being spread on our croplands, on our ranch lands, so we're looking at our consumable foods, we're looking at our livestock that are eating it. So I approached the county. I worked with their detective and their constable and the commissioners. And TPPF, actually, right here, crafted the bill. Andrew, if you're watching, thank you. And we crafted a bill requiring Synagro, who was the company distributing this, to test for these chemicals before it was released to apply as land fertilizer. We actually made a lot of progress. It took a while to get a hearing, but we got a hearing. And
this was kind of like the first bill of this nature to ever be filed in the legislature. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, the first to certainly get a hearing.
Right, and so it's a big deal that
it got a hearing. It's a big deal that we got a hearing. Yeah, it was, and I learned through the 10 months of campaigning on it that no one wanted to take it on because the universe became bigger and broader as I campaigned, and I had senators in D.C. calling and saying, Texas, thank you for taking this on. We need you to continue the fight. There are almost 20,000 forever chemicals right now in our universe. That's land, water, and air.
Sure.
It's everywhere. So it's a big, big universe. But my bill, I crafted very small. Andrew helped me with this to identify the 17, 16 plus a kind of a rogue, to be identified and prevent that from being spread on lands. Well, when we got the hearing, and it went very well, we had great witnesses, but in the back of the room, the lobbyists were lined up.
Sure.
And every kind of lobbyist, oil and gas, and like people like Synagro Industry, and there were a lot of people there. So I came to learn that there was some intervention in my bill. And of course, that was using taxpayer dollars to pay the lobbyists to be there at my hearing to influence it.
For a moment, were you expecting that opposition on the day of the hearing? Did they give you a heads up?
No, they didn't. Here's the sad part about this whole journey is that way back with the DuPont Teflon issue, and it was discovered, and they took that on, and RFK actually litigated that, and the settlement, it was just swept under the carpet. It disappeared for 30, 35 years. And that's the sad part, that no one, it's such a big universe out there. Now, I will say the state of Maine took it on, and they actually got it through their legislature, and they ban all PFAS. Now, the testing is very expensive, and I am trying to work with the state and USDA in D.C. to help pay for some of that testing so that we can broaden it from 17 to hopefully all PFAS.
It's expensive, but I would imagine the argument is that we're saving lives.
We're saving lives. Yes, no one should say no to that. Exactly. So that's one thing that I'm trying to do now. And I am just hoping in the next session that we can continue the fight. I know TPPF has actually come to me and said we want to continue the fight. Actually, TPPF, Aaliyah, your former employee, did an incredible booklet on this with amazing research, much more than I know. If anyone wants access to that, they need to go to TPPF. And she encompasses the whole universe of PFAS. So it's a big bill. It's a big ask. So hopefully we can make progress in the next session, get it to the floor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just as a final question, Representative Kerwin, so when I think of Texans, a lot of them, we've talked about this, are fed up, but are, high taxes, local government overreach. As a state official and then as a former local official, what's the best advice you can give, average, normal Texans in terms of how can they best advocate for good governance at the local and state level?
Engage. Engage. We are losing so much of our incredible Texas values, our Texas stories. We're fighting hard to protect. We have so many of DEI, the woke, everything out there, we need to work very, very hard. And so I say to all my constituents and all the voters in Texas, be aware, elect good candidates, good conservative candidates to protect you, protect our legacies for future generations. Go to meetings, run for office. It's just filling out a form and knocking on doors, and it's fun. It's really fun. And they've just got to speak out. There are forces here in Austin on the House floor with an agenda that I learned that push very, very hard against conservatism and our values. So we've got to stay on top of this.
Representative Kerwin, thank you so much for your leadership and for joining us today.
Well, you're so welcome. Thank you. I really enjoyed it.
Until next time, I'm Jose Melendez reminding you it's your money, your government, and your voice.